It's an odd thing, isn't it? That so many people who speak of awakening, consciousness, and spiritual growth quietly confess that they cannot find love anymore. They say, "The more I wake up, the less I can tolerate superficial relationships. The more I see through the games, the harder it is to play them. I feel too much, I see too much, and I end up alone." Perhaps you know something of this dilemma yourself. You are no longer satisfied with the old scripts, yet you are not sure what to put in their place. My name is Alan Watts, and for much of my life I've been accused, quite rightly, of trying to make a little sense of this business of being human. In the middle of the last century, long before dating apps and social media, people already came to me with this strange complaint. I've seen through a great deal of illusion, yet I seem to be paying for it with my love life. Today the costumes have changed, you swipe instead of writing letters, but the ache is remarkably similar. Spiritual language on the profile, ancient loneliness in the heart. Historically, we were told a simple story about love. Find your other half, settle down, and the rest will more or less take care of itself. But awakening complicates this tale. When you begin to see that you are not merely a lonely fragment hunting for completion, but an expression of a larger whole, many of your old romantic fantasies crumble. You can no longer pretend that another person will rescue you from yourself, or give your life its only meaning. This is liberating in one sense, and deeply disorienting in another. So the question we will explore is this: why do spiritually awake people seem to struggle more with love? And is that actually a problem or a passage? The revolutionary suggestion is that what you call a problem may in fact be a sign that you are outgrowing a limited way of loving. You are bumping into the edges of a small, transactional model of relationship. The task is not to shrink back into it, but to discover a wider way of relating that matches the depth of what you have seen. The central principle is this: awakening does not remove your limitations. It reveals where you were pretending not to have them. In love, most people pretend that they can promise forever, that they can always be consistent, that they will never change their mind. Awakened people, or those on the way, often see too clearly that everything is impermanent, that they themselves are a changing process, that the person across from them is a mystery, not a predictable machine. This honesty makes it harder to utter the old vows with a straight face. It can feel like you are too awake to lie, yet too human to guarantee anything else. I discovered this not from reading sacred texts, but from watching my own romantic entanglements. There were times when I tried to play the traditional role of the dependable partner while secretly craving freedom. Other times when I championed freedom while ignoring how much my heart wanted to belong. Each strategy was an attempt to overcome a limitation without actually meeting it. And each time, life has a way of exposing the pretense. There are three particularly destructive ways in which spiritually inclined people try to deal with love once they have seen through some illusions. The first is spiritual superiority. You begin to think, I am awake, and most people are asleep. Therefore, my pool of potential partners has shrunk to a tiny fraction of the population. You sit in judgment over dating profiles, dismissing anyone who does not quote your favorite mystic, forgetting that genuine depth often hides behind very ordinary words. The second is romantic absolutism. You imagine that because you are awakening, your partner must be too preferably in the same way, at the same pace, with the same vocabulary. Anything less is seen as a compromise of your truth. You are waiting for a mythical being who is perfectly aligned with you in every way. Emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, politically, astrologically. This being rarely arrives, and even if they did, they would probably change. The third is avoidance dressed up as enlightenment. Having been hurt, you declare that you are now beyond relationships. You convince yourself that your solitude is purely a sign of your spiritual maturity. You say things like, I am married to the divine, when in fact you're also quite understandably terrified of being vulnerable again. You use big cosmic statements to cover small, frightened places in your heart. The secret, and it may sting at first, is that awakening does not guarantee relational skill. You can have profound insights into the nature of consciousness and still be a complete novice at honest communication. You can recognize the illusion of the separate self and still be clumsy with boundaries, conflict, and your own unmet needs. Spiritual insight without emotional integration is like a brilliant light shining through dirty glass. The patterns on the glass still distort what comes through. Let me introduce you to Emma. She was in her mid-30s when she came to see me, with eyes that carried both sharp intelligence and a weary tenderness. She had devoured books on non-duality, sat in retreats, tasted moments where the sense of me dissolved into spacious awareness. Those moments, she said, are the only times I feel truly at home. But, she continued, when it comes to love, I'm a disaster. I can't stand small talk. I lose interest as soon as I feel someone is playing roles. If a partner is clingy, I feel suffocated. If they're too independent, I feel unwanted. I've tried dating other spiritual people, but it always turns into a competition about who's more awakened, or a kind of floaty disconnection from real life. I'm starting to think I'll never find anyone. I asked her what she was hoping to find in love that she did not already have in her moments of spacious awareness. She paused. I suppose, she said slowly, I want companionship that doesn't drag me back into the old games. Someone I can be fully myself with, without shrinking. And what does fully yourself mean? I asked. Is it the spacious awareness, or the particular human being named Emma? She frowned. Both, I guess. I want someone who can meet me in that deeper space, but also share the everyday mess. That, I said, is a very reasonable desire. But notice how quickly your mind turns it into a requirement. If they cannot meet me at this particular depth, then it's impossible. Tell me, when you are with people who are not especially spiritual, do you assume they cannot feel deeply? She admitted that some of the most genuine moments she had experienced were with ordinary friends who had never read a spiritual book in their lives. A nurse who sat with her in silence while her mother was ill. A barista who remembered her name and asked sincerely how she was doing, listening without rushing. These people did not speak her philosophical language, yet something in them recognized something in her. So perhaps, I suggested, it is not that you cannot find love, but that your idea of what spiritually awake love must look like has become another limitation. You are looking for a concept, not a person. She laughed, a little embarrassed. That's painfully accurate. I offered her a simple practice. For the next 30 days, I said, when you meet anyone, not just potential partners, experiment with 2 moves. First, drop the label. Instead of thinking awake, asleep, spiritual, not spiritual, treat them as an unknown depth. Second, notice your own reactions, attraction, resistance, boredom, fear, as waves in your awareness, not as verdicts on who they are. When you talk with someone, practice being curious about their reality, not about whether they fit your checklist. She agreed, though she warned me that she wasn't going to start dating just anyone, for science. A month later, she wrote that her love life had not transformed into a fairy tale, but something more interesting had happened. She felt less lonely in general. By dropping her spiritual labels, she found herself genuinely moved by the sincerity of people she had previously dismissed. She still wanted a partner who could meet her depth, but she was no longer using that desire as a shield against all connection. I realize, she said, that I had turned awakening into a pedestal that very few could reach, including myself most days. Now it feels more like a background hum, something I can recognize in many different kinds of people. If Emma's struggle was subtle, the next story is more raw. His name was Thomas, a man in his early 40s who had been through what people like to call a dark night of the soul. After a series of losses, a divorce, a bankruptcy, a serious illness, he had stumbled into a profound shift of perspective. Sitting alone in his small apartment one night, convinced he was at the end of his rope, he experienced a sudden quiet sense that the him who was failing was not the whole of what he was. The weight on his chest lifted slightly. The room seemed transparent. as if the space itself were aware. Since then, he had been living more simply, meditating, reading, volunteering. "I feel more at peace than I ever have," he told me, "and also more alone. Before I could distract myself with dating, with drama. Now, when I try to meet people, it all feels like noise. I go on dates and it's like we're interviewing each other for roles in a play I no longer believe in. I can't bring myself to pretend I'm looking for the same things. So I leave, and the silence is both beautiful and unbearable." I asked, "What do you imagine love should feel like now?" He thought, "Like two people sharing that same quiet recognition, not needing each other to fill a hole, but choosing to walk together. I just don't see it out there." "Perhaps," I said gently, "because you are still insisting that love must look a particular way, a way that protects you from ever feeling that old pain again. You want awakening and relationship to guarantee safety, but awakening does not make you invulnerable. It makes you more porous. You feel more, not less." He winced. "That's exactly what scares me." "Of course," I replied. "You touched a vastness in which your old story dissolved." It was a relief. The idea of letting another person close enough to disturb that quiet feels dangerous. "So you pre-reject almost everyone. You say they are too noisy, too asleep, too superficial. Some of them may be. But notice how this also protects you from ever having to risk being seen in your new tender state." I suggested a practice that, to his credit, he took seriously. "For the next 30 days, I said, do not focus on finding the one. Instead, focus on staying open in small, safe ways. When you talk to a cashier, a neighbor, a colleague, let yourself feel the shared humanity for a few seconds longer than you normally would. When you feel the impulse to retreat into your inner cave, pause and take 3 conscious breaths instead. You are not forcing intimacy. You are retraining a nervous system that has learned to equate closeness with danger." Over those weeks, he discovered something interesting. Love did not appear as a sudden soulmate at his door. It appeared as moments, a shared laugh with an old friend, a quiet conversation with a fellow volunteer after cleaning up a park, a child waving at him on the bus. None of these were the grand romance he thought he was missing. But as he allowed them in, he noticed that his body relaxed. The sharp edge of loneliness softened into a gentler solitude. "Maybe," he wrote, "spiritually awake people don't struggle to find love because love is scarce, but because we've become very picky about what form it's allowed to take. I still want partnership, but I no longer feel like the universe owes me someone who will never disturb my peace. That expectation was my limitation, not life's. So why then do spiritually awake people seem to have a harder time in love? Because much of what passes for love in our culture is built on mutual limitation, mutual pretending, mutual projection, mutual avoidance of our deeper questions. When you start to see through those games, you can't fully play them anymore. That means fewer quick connections, fewer instant intoxications. It means saying no to relationships that once would have been good enough. It means a period, sometimes quite long, of standing in the space between old patterns and new possibilities. This space feels like emptiness, and in a sense it is empty of the old illusions. But emptiness is also openness. When you stop demanding that a partner complete you, you free them from an impossible task. When you stop believing that you must be perfectly healed before anyone can love you, you free yourself from an impossible task. The limitation shifts from, "I can't find love," to "I am learning how to love in a way that matches what I now know to be true." That is a very different kind of limitation. It is the stretch of growth, not the crunch of self-betrayal. The spiritual dimension of this is simple and profound. Love is not something that comes to you from outside as a stamp of approval. Love is the recognition of yourself in another form. When you know yourself as awareness as the space in which all experiences arise, you begin to see that same awareness looking out of other eyes. You may not agree on politics or playlists, but at a deeper level, there is a resonance. Ah, here is the same mystery, wearing a different face. This recognition does not guarantee compatibility. Two awakened people may still be a terrible match for sharing a kitchen, but it changes the flavor of connection. The other is no longer a means to your happiness. They are a fellow wave in the same sea. From that perspective, even relationships that do not last can be seen as complete, not as failures. They gave you a chance to see some hidden corner of yourself, to touch some aspect of love, to stretch some limitation you might never have noticed alone. Now, you might be wondering, all right, this is lovely philosophy, but what can I actually do when I'm lying awake at night, feeling like the only person on earth who can't find love? Let us bring this down from the clouds into a simple experiment you can run in the laboratory of your own life. First, notice the story. The next time you catch yourself thinking, because I am spiritually awake, I can't find love, pause and hear those words as a narrative, not as objective truth. Feel how heavy they make your body, how tight your chest becomes. Gently label them as a thought, not as your destiny. This tiny reframing already loosens the limiting spell. You are not a cursed character in a tragic romance. You are awareness hearing a familiar line of dialogue. Second, question the requirement. Write down, if you like, all the conditions your mind insists a partner must meet. Now that you are awake, they must meditate, think like you, never trigger you, never be messy, never change, and so on. Then ask honestly, is this list describing a human being or a fantasy? Would I myself meet all these criteria on a bad day? The point is not to throw away discernment, but to see where self-protection has disguised itself as high standards. Third, practice presence with everyone, not just potential lovers. For 30 days, make it a game to be fully present with at least one person each day, a friend, a stranger, a colleague. Put your phone aside, look into their eyes, listen without rehearsing your reply. Notice how often your mind wants to evaluate them. Too shallow, not my type. And gently return to the raw experience of being there with another living mystery. This trains your nervous system to relax into connection without immediately jumping to categorization. Fourth, let small love count. Each evening, before you sleep, ask yourself, where did love appear today? It might have been a smile from a passerby, a dog leaning against your leg, a moment of compassion for your own tired body. Write down at least one instance. Over time, this simple practice reveals that love is not absent from your life. It is just arriving in forms your old story did not register as significant. You are upgrading your sensitivity, not waiting for a single grand event. Fifth, be honest about your fear. When you meet someone who genuinely interests you, and you feel that impulse to pull away, take a quiet moment to ask, what am I afraid would happen if I let this develop? Fear of rejection, of losing your hard-won inner peace, of repeating old patterns, all of these are understandable. Name them. Feel them in the body. Do not immediately obey them. To overcome a limitation, you must first be willing to feel the discomfort it guards. Sixth, speak from where you actually are. If you begin seeing someone, resist the urge to present a polished spiritual persona. Instead, experiment with saying simple, vulnerable things like, I've been through some shifts that make me see life differently, and sometimes that makes me cautious in relationships. Or, I value depth, and I'm also clumsy at this. You are not giving a lecture on awakening. You are giving the other person a roadmap to your humanity. The ones who are capable of real love will find this refreshing, rather than threatening. Seventh, remember that your worth is not measured by your relationship status. This may sound cliché, but it cuts to the root of the limitation. As long as you secretly believe that being loved by someone else is proof that you are enough, you will contort yourself to win that proof and then fear losing it. Awakening is, in part, the seeing through of this bargain. You are not valuable because someone chooses you. You are valuable because you exist, because the universe, for reasons beyond anyone's understanding, has decided to take the shape of you for a little while. From that ground, Love becomes a sharing, not a validation. If you commit to this kind of experiment, you may find that the sentence, "spiritually awake people can't find love anymore," slowly changes its flavor. It becomes less like a lament and more like a description of a transitional stage. People who are waking up are learning to love in a new way, and that takes time. You are not broken. You are between stories. The old one, find someone to complete you and everything will make sense, no longer convinces. The new one, love as a meeting of two free, honest beings, is still writing itself. In that in-between, it is natural to feel lonely. Loneliness is the echo of the old identity fading. But even loneliness can become a teacher if you let it. When you sit quietly with that ache instead of rushing to fill it, you may notice that beneath the craving for someone is a more basic longing to be allowed fully as you are, to rest from all performing, to relax into being. Once you see that, you can begin to offer that quality of acceptance to yourself, here and now, rather than postponing it until a mythical partner arrives to grant it. And curiously, the more at home you are in your own being, the less desperate you become in love. You stop scanning every face for rescue. You stop trying to force chemistry where there is none. You are still open, still available. But there is a quiet dignity in your openness. People feel this. Some will be intimidated and drift away. Others, those whose own awakening is stirring, will be drawn to it like a plant to sunlight. So, if you are listening to this with that familiar mixture of hope and fatigue, take a breath. You are not failing at life because you cannot cram yourself back into relationships that no longer fit. You are not too much for love. You are simply being invited into a love that is larger than the old bargain. It begins, inconveniently, with you. With how tenderly and honestly you can meet your own heart, your own limits, your own longing. Before you vanish into your next distraction, I'd like to ask you something. Where does this story, "I can't find love anymore," feel most alive in you right now? Is it in the disappointment of recent dates? The grief of a relationship that ended when you started to change? The quiet ache of years spent alone? If you feel moved, share a little of that in the comments. Not as a complaint to the universe, but as a way of saying, "This is where I am on the path." You may discover that many others are standing in a very similar clearing. If this conversation has given you even a slight shift in perspective, consider staying with us on this journey. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next mind shift we explore together. Give this video a like if it resonated with your experience, and share it with someone who might be quietly wondering why love seems harder since they started to wake up. As we come to a close, 2 other videos are appearing on your screen right now. 2 different doorways into the same exploration of limitation, awakening, and love. Choose whichever one calls to you, and let the inquiry continue. Thank you for lending your ears, your attention, and your very human heart to this talk. May you remember, again and again, that even in your loneliest moments, you are not separate from the love you seek.